Slept on Cinema is sponsored by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know someone who's struggling with shoe tying for any reason, Training Ties is the perfect solution.
Monster runs through museum. Audience gets bored.
A derivative and predictable post-alien sci-fi horror film.
Peter Hyams shares his beast's repellent disregard for human life.
It pains me to confess that, aside from the spectacularly ugly Cathoga, the movie isn't much good.
Sloppy jump cut directing and poor pacing make it a disappointing bore. Welcome to this week's episode of Slept On Cinema. I'm your host, Stan Steamer.
I'm Grove Street.
And this week we are getting into the 1997 creature feature, horror, haunted house, everything movie, The Relic. As always, movies that we review on our podcast have to be below 50 for the audience score and critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. And we structure the pod so that the first half is spoiler-free. We talk about some things to look for in the film. Go take a break, watch the movie, come back, and talk about what we just saw.
Rotten premise. A homicide detective helps a biologist hunt a green creature that is killing people in a Chicago museum. Critics, 37%. Audience, slightly lower at 34%.
It always perplexes me when the audience is below the critics for movies like this. It just like
especially the movies that we choose, yeah.
It feels like they should always be like I get the critics, but I feel like the people should always be at least higher than the critics. This makes no sense to me.
I completely agree, except for when it's one of those like art house boring movies that like only the critics really enjoy. Yes. Then, you know, like the audience is like, I'm bored. But this isn't absolutely that type of movie. This is not an on board movie.
That type of movie. No, because usually you see the flip like that, and you're just like, wow, this like that's almost like the worst movie you could see. Critics 90, audience 10, and you're just like, this movie's going to be horrible.
Yeah, it's going to be slow, and it's all going to be over my head. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, get into some of the background here, and pardon my voice, a bit of a cold, so it's still the same Stan, just different voice. Not a whole lot to get into this movie because I don't think you really need a lot of background to get into this. But it came out January 10th, 1997, as a lot of our movies do, opened number one, so took down the weekend, knocked off Michael. Remember that film with John Travolta?
Oh, was he an angel in that one?
Yeah. Very, very forgettable, but regardless, still knocked it down. Great time to be a movie fan. Again, even though I feel like January is often kind of a doldrums at movie theaters, but Scream was out. Jerry Maguire was out. Those both came out a couple weeks before, as did Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Wow, classic. This movie was on top of all of them this week at the movie theaters.
Yeah.
Huh? Wow.
It was a great movie. I'm sure the previews were great. The only background I'm really going to get into, so this is based on a pretty successful book that came out in 1995, written by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. And Preston was a former employee at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Definitely comes through in the writing. It becomes clear, like, my guess is he didn't get see eye to eye with a lot of the folks in the administration, because I think the view of the museum administrators is pretty bleak. So that's just a hunch on my part. And part of that, I think the people at the American Museum of Natural History in New York agreed with that assessment, because they went and tried to film this in New York at the location that the book takes place, and offered them over $1 million to shoot there. And they told them to go pound sand. They're like, you're not filming this movie here. We've read the book and we don't like it. So they shuffled a few things. The movie now takes place in Chicago instead of New York, which leads to a few sort of peculiar moments where it's like, oh, where was this ship? Oh, it was in Lake Michigan. Not really giving anything away there, but you can tell they kind of shoehorned a little bit of that in. But it doesn't matter. It's a great looking museum, but a nice little nugget of background there that I think explains some of those little things you might have a question about otherwise.
Yeah, they put a couple lampshades on the things you'd have a question about as to how they got to Chicago.
Yep, totally. I believed it. And of course, I have to say this, that our main man, Stan Winston, who also did the creature in Lake Placid, does the phenomenal creature in this film. Mostly practical effects, a little bit of CGI. I think that he didn't do the CGI, he did the practical effects, but the practical effect versions are phenomenal.
Yeah, the the practical effects put the CGI to shame for sure in this movie, and
it's a tough era for CGI, but
absolutely
not horrific, but just you can't get on the level of a Stan Winston creature with CGI in the mid '90s. It's just not going to happen.
CGI to this day probably still can't compete with Stan Winston.
Totally agree. All right, should we get into our bolos?
Let's get into bolos. You can go first.
Yeah, we'll go first. And I feel like I have a very short list. I don't know what that says about this movie, but
it's a lean movie.
It's a lean movie. It's not one of those movies where you're picking up on little things here and there. Everything here, it's lean. We'll just say it's lean. My first bolo, I'm going to go with bolo a joint.
Yeah, I had that pot on the potty.
Oh yeah. They also there's a strange zoom in and focus on the joint as if it's going to be very relevant later, and that I missed that part where it comes back.
Not Chekhov's joint in this movie, so don't worry. Be on the lookout for a well lit scene. Might be hard to find.
Along that vein, I will say just be on the lookout for flashlights because there are a lot of them, and you need one.
Bolo a casual shrug before drinking a witch doctor's concoction.
Love that. Absolutely love that. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to say bolo literally rolling out the red carpet.
Bolo shoulder pads on coats.
Are those coming back? I feel like those are coming back.
I hope so.
I'll start stockpiling my shoulder pads now just in case. I'm going to say bolo the hypothalamus.
Definite bolo. Bolo calling someone a butt wipe.
It's funny. You might see a double feature of this and Beavis and Butthead Do America, and I don't even know if they mentioned call someone a butt wipe in that film, but they do here.
Butt wipes in every movie at that time.
I'm going to say bolo a lucky bullet.
Good. I'll just go bolo superstitions.
Hard to miss in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say bolo Beatles. Some great Beatles.
Great one. Bolo a failed bribe.
Nice. And this is kind of similar. This is my last bolo. But I'm going to say bolo brown nosing.
Nice. All right, I'll try to fire these off pretty fast here. Bolo, let's see, a custody battle for a dog. Bolo cutting school to go to a museum. Bolo calling someone a gerbil and getting laughs from it. Bolo,
should bring that back.
Bolo Brooks from Shawshank.
Bolo, I guess there's also Bolo that woman from, I don't know if it was the Practice. I think it was the Practice. And she's now in maybe CSI, one of those movies.
Oh, the short lady who's in Blacklist. She's just all over network TV.
Yeah. It's great. It's great when you see a TV star in a movie. I don't know why. Yeah, it's just always
awesome.
great.
And this is the perfect movie for it. Oh, I guess we'll also say Bolo Richie Aprile also in this.
Mm-hmm.
Bolo a lick. Be on the listen for a car accident sound effect from a computer.
Ooh.
Bolo. Bolo jump scares. There's a few of them. I like this one. Bolo handing someone your coat and then having them hand it off to someone else because they didn't want you to hand them their coat. Bolo a pager. Bolo broken mirrors. And last one, Bolo taking head joke.
Nice. Yeah, the pager's a good one. This movie, the technology in this is like if you're a fan of mid-90s technology, there's just some great elements of that here.
Oh, yeah.
And who isn't, really?
Drink to pair with the movie. I'll go. Actually, you can go ahead. You can go first here.
All right. So a lot of our categories at this time, I thought that there were some answers that was almost like, felt to me at least, this was the only possible answer. Like this just lended itself so perfectly to some of our categories. And this was one of them. I'm going to go with a basil julep. So it's just like a mint julep, but I actually prefer my julep with basil. So take a bunch of basil leaves, muddle them all up, make your julep, make sure you got plenty of leaves in there, throw some bourbon in, a little sugar. That is the perfect drink to pair with this movie.
That sounds incredible. I mean, I do like basil more than mint, so it seems like that would improve the drink.
And any cocktail that has mint in it is going to be much better with basil. Like basil is just a better herb than mint.
Well, maybe you could have your drink while playing this game, but I didn't exactly choose a drink. I just said when to drink. So in this movie, drink your basil julep when you hear the word hypothalamus.
Oh, I like that. It's like a thinking man's drinking game.
Exactly.
Or is it a feeling man's drinking game? I should know what the hypothalamus does at this point.
It does a lot.
It does a lot, that's for sure.
All right, so you can drink your basil julep when they say hypothalamus and take this time to go enjoy the movie.
And maybe take a break after all those mint juleps and then come back because you will be hammered.
Good idea.
According to museum security, you were the last one to leave last night. Did you see or hear anything strange?
Well, I thought I heard something as I was leaving, but it could have been anything.
Sweeping teams of two. Nobody goes in alone. This place is not going to open until every room is clear. Now go.
Come out, wherever you are.
Any idea about a weapon?
Something big.
The board is hosting a gala preview here tomorrow night. It would be a disaster for us if we had to postpone.
We may have somebody on our hands who makes Jeffrey Dahmer look like a Cub Scout.
You have to let the gala go on. Something's wrong.
Mama, what's the matter with you?
33% Homo sapien.
Party? What are you talking about?
Gradual extinction of the human race.
Welcome back. Slept on Cinema is brought to you by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know anyone who's struggling with shoe tying, Training Ties is the perfect solution. Or if you know anyone who just doesn't like tying their shoes, Training Ties keeps shoes tied all day long. Say no to Velcro and yes to independence with Training Ties.
Welcome back. That was awesome.
That was so much fun.
I said it in the beginning when we kicked this off that, like, obviously this is a creature feature, but I also do feel like it's a haunted house film because it all takes place in this museum, and sort of the museum is kind of an important part of the story. Like, you kind of get the layout of the museum, the lab space, the event space, the underground tunnels, which felt very haunted housey to me. And then there's also like a kind of like a love story too in there between the two main characters. I'm going to say it has a little bit of everything.
A little bit of a buddy cop aspect too. There was a couple of close cops there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this movie had everything. You want to start with your first draft pick?
Yes. There's a lot to choose from. I think there's a lot that really went right in this film. But I got to stick with my main man Stan here, and I have to take the creature. It's really tough for me to see a creature feature that has such a good creature and not take the creature. I mean, this thing, the versions that were made with the practical effects where it was just like that, like nasty gaping mouth, like the mouth was the best part of the whole thing. It was just like, there was teeth, and it was this pink and gloppy, drippy, snotty, wet, just gross thing. And then the fur, and like, is this thing a lizard? Like what? Like,
yeah, all the different aspects from all different creatures was just so great, including like the little front of the beetle, which was perfect for ripping off heads.
Oh, I mean, everything about this was just phenomenal. I thought it was gross. It was terrifying. It was everything you want from a monster in a monster movie.
And they did a good job in the monster movie too of sort of delaying us seeing the monster. We get a little glimpse of maybe an arm, and then maybe it's silhouette here and there, but we don't quite see it till later on in the movie. And then towards the end, you just see it constantly, which is great. It was a great payoff after a long build-up.
Yep, and even the ooze that seeps through underneath the door when the monster's banging on the door, and I couldn't tell if that was like saliva or blood, but it was that clear, sticky ooze that Dr. Green then goes and tests with her new DNA sequencer.
Yes, when it finishes its match, that's when it does the car accident sound effect.
Ah, that's what that was. Yes. So I thought the monster was great, and even elements of the CGI were okay. I thought, like, obviously the lick was the most disappointing part of the entire movie for me. because the monster was so good, and you find it almost felt like it was added after the fact. Like they were like, we need to have something that shows this relationship between the two of them that existed beforehand, because the monster itself was just so gross and nasty, and the lick was kind of tame. It was like so clearly CGI. It wasn't like wet and invasive. It really felt like someone like drew it on top of the screen after the movie was already done. So that's the only thing. But even the like flaming monster CGI stuff at the end, I thought that was fine.
Yeah. At the time, seeing this in '97 without HD or whatever, you probably wouldn't even notice, and you thought it was great sound effects. Some of these movies suffer from getting digitally upgraded as time goes by, so you see all of the flaws that initially you probably didn't see at all.
Yep, that's a good call.
My first draft pick will be not quite the. You already took the creature, but I love the demon or the creature's name, Cathoga. Ooh. I'm a huge fan of like demonic names in movies. There's something so unique about them. So I have like Cathoga's up there, Valak from The Conjuring, Pazuzu from Exorcist, Azazel from Fallen, Paimon Hereditary, Mammon from Constantine, Lamia from Drag Me to Hell, and Bathsheba from Conjuring. And I think the Cathoga just fits in great with all of those names. It's just such a perfect creature name.
Yep. Because it sounds like it sounds like it came from like the jungle. There's something kind of like ancient about it as well. Yes. It's a great name.
It's perfect for that and for its origin and for what it looks like. And I'll just my second pick. It still I guess has to do with the creature, but I think it's pretty rare that a creature only does this. But the Cathoga just taking heads. Just love the fact that it kills everyone just by ripping its head off. And it's not like it doesn't just do it clean. It's got to like jimmy it back and forth a little bit. It takes a little bit of time.
And sometimes it doesn't come all the way off, and it's just hanging there.
It doesn't come all the way off, exactly. But I like the idea of the creature, not just like eating people and slicing them up with their talons and claws. It's just popping their head off.
That's a great call, because it adds a great layer to the movie of just like creepiness when they can't figure out and they think this is a serial killer and they're like, holy shit, this is some depraved lunatic cutting people's heads off. And you're like, wow, that's where police would go. Like, they're not going to think this is some mythical mutated beast. They would think it's a person.
They thought it was a guy in the basement with an axe.
Yeah, right. So as anyone would. But the taking the heads off is a phenomenal touch. That's a great pick. My second pick, I'm going to go with just the whole X-Files feel. Like, I feel like this movie came out in the heyday of the X-Files, which is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. It was, for network TV, X-Files was phenomenal. I watched that religiously growing up. And I feel like they said, this show was great. Let's make a movie that's great, that's just like that. And they did, and it's also great. And I love that. Like, I feel like a lot of movie making is just making something else better or taking a different direction. And they did that here. I feel like even the main character here is basically Gillian Anderson. Like, they made her look as much as they could like Absolutely. Gillian Anderson in the X-Files. And, like the X-Files would have this season-long plot that would span many seasons, mainly focused on aliens. But then throughout the season, they'd have these Monster of the Week episodes that would be self-contained, just about a creature. And this totally felt just like one of those. Like, it was even with the scientist who's skeptical about these myths and trying to refute everything with science. This was basically an X-Files episode.
Yeah, that's a great point. This is exactly like an episode of X-Files. And you're right, the characters are very similar. Man, I just remember thinking back to that just right when the beginning of X-Files would come on. You have to make sure you're just situated for the next hour with nothing else to do.
Oh, yeah. So I love the X-Files. I love this movie. I thought that was just a great move.
Yeah, that's a great parallel to draw. It's very, very X-Files feel.
For my third pick, I'm going to go with, I thought this movie had just the right amount of science. I felt like I was watching it and I was like, all right, DNA, I'm kind of learning about this. And then she's talking about even the things about it. We use these beetles to like take the meat off the bones. And like, there was just all these little elements of science here. And it wasn't too sciencey where I was, getting lost. And I'm like, this is too much like a science class. I still felt like I was in a movie, but at just the right level to keep me sort of like feeling like I was learning something.
Yeah, it's like an intro to science class. And then you're like, oh, maybe I'm good at science. And then you take a few more in-depth classes and realize you're not.
No, of course not.
This is just like perfect amount of like dumbed down science that you can just get it.
Yeah, it was, I mean, because sometimes, sometimes they dumb it down too much and you're like, come on, like,
right.
I know more science than that. But then sometimes they do take it to the other end and you're just like, okay, hold on. I gotta like pause this and go get my like AP biology textbook out to do some background reading.
They did have the other detective really struggle with the term hypothalamus. This is a very, very fragile moment. But other than that, yeah, it was just science for dummies.
Yeah. So I love that. They struck that balance perfectly.
That's a great pick. Let's see. So I have a few choices here for is this sleeper? No, this is the third round
pick.
Your
last regular pick.
Last regular pick. Okay, good. I'm going to go with computers going haywire. I love when screens just start flashing. It could be like a prison escape. It could be some caper movie where they infiltrate some high-end tech place, and then all of a sudden something gets tripped, everything gets locked down, all of the computers are just flashing blue and red, and there's just sirens and horns all over the place. No one ever knows how to get back online.
Yeah, I mean, if you like that, then this movie must be one of your favorite movies of all time, because the computer going haywire scene was like the most haywire I've ever seen a computer go.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed that scene. Yeah, I guess I can't choose 2 for 1 there, but maybe
I also like how it's like to reset it, they had to go in like some crazy other place. It wasn't just like the back of the like monitor or whatever.
Yeah, the room that no one wanted to go to, and then of course the guy who didn't go got it first.
No, that's a great pick.
My sleeper pick. Oh, I think I got 2 tough ones here. I'm gonna go with this is a tough one, but pulling up half of a body. So like it happened in Lake Placid. It happens all the time in like shark movies, but like you always see the arms go up and they pull them up and then the second half of the body isn't there. And we got a great one in this movie, which led to a very comical yell by the other SWAT guy who maybe they were brothers-in-law or something. They were very, very close.
That was that whole scene was amazing. Where the guys just dropping down and just getting destroyed, and you're like, "Do you not see what's going on down here? Like, maybe send more than one guy down at once." But that is a great element.
It was just slow enough so the next guy could watch the guy before him get eaten and then be terrified and scream to get back up.
That's a great pick. Ooh, I'm also torn here on my sleeper, and I'm gonna give a shout out and then a sleeper pick. My shout out is gonna be because you already mentioned it a little bit early on. I was going to go with John Whitney's expression right before he drinks that concoction with one of your bolos, because I thought that expression was like, yeah, sure, what's the worst that could happen? And then it's like, well, here you see you turn into a brain eating monster that like ruins the museum and kills countless numbers of people.
Yeah, maybe should have given it a little more thought.
I will not go with that, but I would have gone with that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with, and this comes up in pretty much every instance when a movie has a coroner in it, but just the very salty coroner. I love a salty coroner, and this one was maybe the best one I've ever seen.
She was incredible. It was just like Rodney Dangerfield out there, just zipping everyone.
Yes, absolutely everyone. It was. She was on fire. Like no one else in this movie owned the minutes that she had on screen as well as that character did. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and if she was able to do it was like good jabs at people as well as she was incredibly intelligent. She was doing the whole like breakdown of the headless body and then making some good height and weight jokes along the way.
And she's the one who figured out that the hypothalamus is missing.
Yeah, where is it?
She was great. She was absolutely amazing.
I had her as a possible pick, so I'm glad you took her. I guess my shout out would be Tom Sizemore's coat. I mentioned a little bit before, but if I'm showing up with no training at all to a horrific scene and I have that coat on, maybe I didn't shave for a day or two, I'm getting let right in past the
yes, 100%.
Like this guy for what to do.
Yes, this guy is official. Let's do whatever he says.
The presence that is created by just wearing that jacket, that coat.
Yeah, we should both get those.
I agree. All right, that moves us to our superlative, which is what again this week?
Favorite severed head.
Favorite severed head. I feel like we're both going to take the same one, but I'll let you go first here because I have a backup.
See, I was torn, so I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
I feel like we'll see. I'm going to go with, and this is sort of in line with a number of my other picks in other movies that we've done, where I love when a movie just sets you up right from the beginning so you know just what you're getting into. So they're on the boat, they're looking for bodies, like, oh, where are the bodies? Oh, what's that smell? Oh, is the bilge down here? And then they open it up and you're just like, oh, what is this? And then this severed head just floats across the top of the water all the way across the screen with this expression on its face. And you're just like, hell yeah, this is what I signed up for. This movie's going to be amazing.
That's a great pick. You're right. That did set the stage for the rest of the movie. That was awesome. And I'm glad we didn't pick the same one, but I forget his name, but he was like the smarmy, like jerk employee of the museum. I think it was like Thomas.
It's better we don't even remember his name because he was such a jerk.
But he's just annoying the whole time, mispronouncing Tom Sizemore's character's name on purpose, and then doesn't even know it at the end. And his head getting ripped off was just amazing and satisfying. It started with a great jump scare out of nowhere too, and had to get his head jimmied off. It was just perfection.
Yeah, no, it was so, you knew like that you knew that guy was going to get it bad because he was pretty much hated by every single character in the movie, and he also got fired right before he got his head ripped off. So
he did. He
tough
was
day
awful
for him.
Well, I didn't take this, but he was also part of this. But I almost drafted someone not wanting something to close down because an upcoming event is coming. So, like, in Jaws or Dante's Peak or Earning This, they just don't want to shut the museum down or close the beach because it's a big day. Never quite weighing the fact that because of this big day, lots of people might get killed. And this guy was right on board with it. Never wanted Sizemore to bring any cops in there. Didn't want to get, didn't want any attention from the police, and everything was fine.
Yeah. We should definitely rethink that next time this comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. One change to be a blockbuster.
So, I mean, this one, again, I said this before, that there's some categories here that just make things, the answers are so obvious. And this one, I'm sure every single person who watches this now has the same reaction. It's just too dark. Yeah. Like, I get it's a dark movie. You're in tunnels a lot. The lights are out. It's supposed to be a dark movie. And that's fine. You can have a dark movie. But there were just scenes where I just couldn't see really anything here. And I gather that some of this has to do with streaming services, that I think if you see this on Blu-ray or on DVD or in a movie theater, the nuance and the different tones and the blacks come out a lot better. That I think something to do with the compression when you're watching it over streaming, that just doesn't handle darks and black colors very well. So I think this is a movie that obviously came out pre-streaming, and it just wasn't shot in a way that was conducive to the modern viewing experience. So I don't remember what this looked like when it first came out, but maybe this wasn't an issue then. But they got to figure out a way to fix that. They, remaster it, or there's got to be some way to make this so you see more of the film, because there were a number of times where I was like, this is just, I'm looking at a black screen right now. Like, there's nothing on my television here.
The lighting was mine too. I think that's the obvious choice. And I think we both probably listened to the same podcast. Tarantino started a new podcast, and they did this movie. And he talks about one of the other hosts mentioned how they couldn't see it either. And he was perplexed because he watched it on a videotape and said it was fine. You could see everything on that. But apparently, like you had said, when it switched to streaming services, It is very, very, very dark now. To a detriment, of course. Like you said, like, of course, we're going to be in the tunnels and below and in a dark museum, but you still should see a little bit more than what we did.
Yeah, I mean, and there's got to be a way to fix this, right? Because if it exists and it's fine on video or DVD, that means there's got to be a way to solve this problem. Because this movie is too good to be passed over because of some streaming glitch. Like, that's ridiculous.
This is now in my probably yearly rotation. So the next time I watch it, I'm definitely going to try and mess around with all the settings to see a lot more.
Yeah, or maybe get a DVD.
Maybe just
Blu-ray.
get a DVD. Yeah, actually, I think I have one somewhere. One I should have thrown away. Do you have a favorite finger party food, like served on a platter with somebody walking around?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I always like when things are on a stick. I like any kind of food on a stick at one of these events. They're like easy to eat. I can hold it in one hand. And I don't need like another little plate. I don't have to like hold a plate with it. I can just pick up the stick, and I don't have to I also don't have to touch the food because I've been like shaking people's hands. Yeah. So pretty much any sort of food on a stick is what I'm going for in one of those situations.
And you have no problem with having to worry then about where to put the stick?
Yes, it's an obvious concern. But most places there's either like a tray for like drinks that you put down, or usually the stick is like kind of small enough that you can just like find a place to stash it.
Yeah, the stick is also good too if you're in a conversation that's the sort of place where you kind of are looking for a way out, and you can just sort of like shake it out a little bit and be like, I got to go find trash to throw this away. And then you walk away, maybe go to the bathroom, come back, and that conversation is over. You can go somewhere else.
Yeah, so I'm always looking for ways to end conversations. That's definitely one of my weaknesses. Like people's strengths and weaknesses. Mine is effectively and not awkwardly ending a conversation at an event or a party.
I think that's something I think I'm great at. Like I think I'm like a ninja. You know, ninja can kill you with 10 things they can see in the room, and I can get out of any conversation. But I think I just come off. I think I did a great job, but afterwards, I think I hear from others like, "Oh, but you just kind of like left that conversation." You're like, "No, I said that thing first, right?" It didn't work, but I'm always looking for ways to improve, for sure. Getting into a conversation, apparently no problem there, but it's just so hard to get out. And I think that that little stick can go a long way at one of these cocktail parties.
That's a great move.
Pigs in a blanket, just because I never have it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're delicious. You can't go wrong. Do they ever make those with full-size hot dogs? Is that a thing?
I think that's just a hot dog.
But what about if you like wrap it in an entire like crescent roll?
I mean, I had that yesterday morning with my son. I saw that at a bakery, and it was just like he said. It was like an entire croissant, just with a hot dog inside. It was supposed to be like a sausage, but it was a hot dog. So that sounds amazing. Not quite a finger food, but it was awesome. You got any spin-off ideas?
I got one, and again, this was sort of I was watching. And I was like, this has to be a thing. It was just so obvious to me. I want to take the two buddy cops who I thought were phenomenal on screen, and I want them to have a cops talking coffee show because they have so much great conversation about coffee all throughout the film. This is again our second movie where coffee has played a strangely, I wouldn't say crucial, but large role in the movie. So I want a show where it's them and they are cops. And they're just like trying out new coffee places and testing out coffee, but then also talking about like weird cop stuff or like cases they were on or like whatever it was, just like random cop stuff. And each episode could be them drinking coffee, trying out different coffees, and then talking cop stuff. Kind of like the Seinfeld show that he started with.
Cops and cars drinking coffee.
Yeah. But with these two guys, like they had a great presence. I would watch that all the time.
And one of them was only espresso. The other one was trying to get him to have a latte. So maybe at each place they could have the espresso guy try the latte and see if he'd be interested.
Yep.
I would definitely watch that. Mine would be that I want to see the prequel of the Cathoga back in the tribe days, and they would just create one and send it out after the other tribe and then just wait for it to die. The leaves run out, all the hypothalamuses ran out of people's heads, all the enemies, and then it dies off from starvation, and then they just pop out, and you could just see the Cathoga just destroy another rival tribe.
Oh yeah, they tease you with that story, and you're like, wow, like, just give me a flashback. I want to see this. Give me a flashback. Give me a montage. It'd be awesome.
It feels like that movie Prey, except it's like one tribe sent a predator after the other tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
yeah. I mean, I think that it seems like such an obvious prequel. Everything's teed up for you. You have this great creature, and who knows what that creature looks like, because that's probably different every single time. You can even have a whole series of prequels.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm kind of shocked that doesn't exist. That doesn't make sense to me.
Give it some time. Maybe it will. It should. All right, that was fun, just like the movie. You want to get to what we're doing next?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off? This is another one I have not seen, so I'm very excited to.
I've only seen this once back in my video store days, but Reign of Fire. Not the Sean Connery one, Dragonheart. This is a different one with Matthew McConaughey, and I think it's Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey and some dragons and fighting. Just squeaks underneath our criteria, so I'm looking forward to watching it again.
Sounds awesome.
All right, this was a lot of fun, and see you next time. Later.
Later.